Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this evening or this morning for this Unify webinar about Team Developer 6.1 and the new charting control contained in Team Developer 6.1. I'm your host, Martin Tietz. I will guide you through this webinar. Our speaker today will be Helmut Reimann, who is an experienced Team Developer consultant. A few words about Unify. We are in the database and tools business for a long time now, more than 30 years, and we have lots of experience with databases and 4GL tools, starting with Excel for Unix and now with Team Developer for Windows and for .NET. Unify also has other subsidiaries that do different things. For example, Access One for archiving solutions, Dages for e-discovery solutions, Oracle Forms to Java migration, which is CipherSoft, and Lotus Notes to .NET migration. If you're interested in those, please go to our website and get the details there. Today we are going to talk about Team Developer 6.1. The major benefits of Team Developer 6.1 are its new high productivity IDE that is really fun to use. You will see that when Helmut will show his examples. We have new and enhanced high usability GUI controls that are beautiful to look at and are rich in properties and also rich in APIs that allow to control the controls at runtime. And we have powerful new .NET integration that allow you to leverage the investments into your Team Developer code on .NET. That includes, for example, web services providing, so you can provide your business logic to other platforms, for example, to web applications, to Android applications, to iOS applications, or whatever platform you choose to consume Team Developer web services from. So today, our speaker is Helmut Reimann, as I said, a long-term Unify consultant that has who has lots of experience with Team Developer 6.0 and .NET, and he will be talking about his experiences with the new charting control and how you will be able to use the charting control in the soon-to-be-released Team Developer 6.1. So I'm going to hand over to Helmut now. I'm going to give him presenter rights. Helmut, it's your turn now.
Perfect. So, takes a second to load my desktop. Okay, let's start first with a small presentation about the new charting control. So let's start from the beginning, sorry, let's scroll back. So what we are talking today is we implemented a new charting control into Team Developer 6.1. It's a quick graph replacement. So we know that a lot of people are using quick graph in the past with Team Developer 4.2 and other versions of Team Developer, and we had to find a way to replace it very smoothly. I want to talk and show the chart property dialog, and we have, of course, a new API interface to manage all the data and all the settings for the new charting control. And of course, this new charting control supports .NET WPF. That means you can use this in Win32 applications without changes of source code and API calls. You can directly run this application inside a browser or inside a .NET WPF environment. And of course, I want to show you some samples and demos how to use this control and replacement of this control and so on. So, a little bit about the history about graphic servers in Team Developer. We had formerly a version from bits per second, and bits per second is a company in the US. It was based in New York. This company does no longer exist. So there was no new version since years for this control, and we found out during some migration projects to Team Developer 6 and 5.1, 5.2 that there is no Unicode support. So if you want to display some data like text and so on in Unicode, so you get only question marks. So this was one of the reasons why we replaced the charting control, and we want to have full control about this control. That means it should work in both platform and build targets. And it was old-fashioned and had a very old look and feel. So we were looking for something brand new. And of course, the bit per second version of this graphics server didn't use .NET, so it was not possible to compile the application to .NET. And we looked for a replacement, and we found something which could be used inside your applications without any changes of source code. So it's a one-to-one replacement. That means the charting control reads existing properties from your sources, from the grid graph, for existing basic settings. So if you have basic settings like special fonts, like special settings like how it should look like I want to see a 3D bar, I want to prefer some special colors, and so on. So all these settings are read from the team developer source code and are used to display the first graphs inside the application. So, for example, this screenshot shows an existing application is in since Team Developer 1.1.2. So it's an old demo how to use the graph control inside Team Developer, and I load this into Team Developer 6.0 and 6.1 and could immediately start displaying data and playing around with this charting control. So it was working without any problems. So to set all this new stuff inside this charting control, we had a new property dialog to set all the properties. So mostly if you have an existing control and if you look into the new property dialog, you will see the existing settings of your charting control. So you can start changing the existing settings to get maybe a different look and feel for your new chart control. That means, for example, we have in primary chart several ways to set up yes, two-dimension charts, like horizontal and vertical charts. That means, for example, a document, a line, a pie, or some bubbles, flat bubbles, or a spline and candlesticks, and so on. So many more possibilities to display data inside charting control as before. So also we have stacked bars. That means you can add bars or add values to special bars, like 20% in December and 15% in January means 35% in summary, and so on. Also, you can use areas to display information in different ways. So this is a very, very useful tool to add and display more data as before. Property dialog for two-dimensional charts is for the stacked one, like for the horizontal charts, like bars or candles. So you can use them as a stacked version. And also we have a lot of new three-dimension charts, like an area, bubbles, very nice to use, lines, donuts, and pies, and pyramids, and so on, to display data in a very, very modern way. So you can use them directly by changing only properties in your existing applications. So also we have three-dimensional charts for stacked information, like you want to add bars or you want to add lines, splines, or areas. So this is possible only by changing some very, very easy properties, or you can use API calls to do this during runtime. So, for example, a customer wants to see something in a bar, and later on maybe you want to print something in a line or the splines, so you can change it during a runtime. Here are a few samples, a few screenshots, what's possible with Team Developer charting control. So we have some lines, like with a different epsilon axis, so you can share epsilon axis, you can have different epsilon axis for each line, the same for splines or for bubbles. So you can give more information inside a bubble, so 3D bubble, like I want to have the volume of a special product, I want to have special colors, because maybe we run out of time, and so on. So everything can be set by simple settings inside the charting control by passing values or passing arrays into this chart. Also, the possibility to display stacked information or to display tooltips or to zoom into the chart is given by simple commands and switching on zoom and settings or display something on a special tool pick. So you can, for example, put your mouse on a special value, click on this value, and you get additional information. So for the property dialog for primary chart styles is how you can set the special basic settings for your chart control. So if you have a corporate identity, like you want to have every time the same symbol, every time the same background color, the fonts, and so on. So you can set it during starting your application. That means you can use this property dialog inside your design time environment to display and to set all the settings. And again, if you have existing charting controls from bits per second, then we display all the existing settings and you can change them. Property dialog for access. So you have the possibility to hide or show access. You can share access. You can hide and show labels for this access. You can set up the format of this different access, or you can show grid lines, strip lines, or different other things. Also, you have the possibility to have a logarithm at the y-axis, so to display data in a logarithm way. For example, for statistic values, you don't have to calculate them in your application. Also, you can set up again the font families and all this stuff, which are mostly basics inside the charting. Also, the legend can be switched on and off, so it's possible to display and hide a legend. You have the possibility to dock them around the charting. That means you want to have them on the right, on the top, on the bottom, on the left side. And of course, you have different item markers, like I want to see triangles, or I want to see a circle, whatever, in front of this legend with a color, and this color represents a line or a bar. The overlay, you can overlay different charts with different symbols, so it's possible, for example, to group your charting. That means, for example, you have bars inside your chart, and at the same time you have maybe a linear chart, you have averages in your chart, and different legends and so on, so you can display more different types of charts in one charting control. And the trends for the statistical lines, that means you can have a mean line to display, and to calculate the mean line is done by the charting control itself. You have a min-max line and the best fit line. That means a trend, what's going on, what's maybe expected as the next value. And of course, you have limited lines, and you can say, I want to have only a range displayed inside my charting. Also, what happens with gaps inside my data. I want to display really the gap. I want to display a null value or something else. So everything can be set up by this property dialog or by API calls. So here's a small sample for a basic control. That means we have at this point two sets of data. We display at least 10 points to have more information during setting up and during setting all those properties. We want to have a special background. We want to have special colors for special data sets. And maybe we want to set up a chart title and so on. So this is really a sample of how to set up the basic charting settings. If you don't want to do this in a class like a basic class to set it for all your charts inside your application. So the chart control API is the next very important point. The old API still works fine. So there's no need to change existing codes. you can see, for example, this is the old code snipsel to display something like a pie or this date information from a special month, and we pass some points in an array into this control, and then we do a legend text, we display something, and we draw the this charting. And this is in the same way you can use it in the new control. So if you have existing charts inside your application, you have to do at first nothing. But if you want to change something, like you want to display something very special, then maybe you can mix it up and you can use the old chart API and you can do changes with the new API, or you can replace time by time the old existing chart API with a new charting control. So here's a special one-to-one or displaying one-to-one the new charting API within the old one. So on the left-hand side, you can see this is a new charting API. That means we have UFC chart calls, and we add data series. We can set grid line visibilities. We can set point markers for each data set. We can add marked zone, which is pretty new inside this charting control. I want to display and I want to dim it later on. Also, I can set title fonts. I can set titles and so on. So you can see this is pretty easy to use. You can pass information and data inside an array into this charting control. So it's pretty simple to use. And setting the values by using arrays is a pretty common way. So in the past, maybe you used a quick table in the background to collect all the data information. And this quick table was a basic to pass data into the charting control. With a new API, it's possible to use direct arrays of data. Like you have numbers for y-axis 1 for the dataset number 1 and for the number 2, and you have a string that represents the x values. That means, for example, a data value or special taxes or something else. Or you can pass, of course, numbers into the x-axis to display numbers. So it's a pretty simple thing. The call is to pass something in the charting control for a special data set. So you need the number of the items inside the arrays and pass the array into this charting control, and the job is done. So here's an overview about the charting control API. A few APIs are missing, but you can see there are a lot of new API calls inside, and like set data with X categories or add custom X lines, or if you have, for example, Y visibilities, label colors, and title colors, and so on. And of course, a zoom scroll. That means you can set up a special value. So if you have maybe more than 100 items inside your chart control, then you can start zooming into this chart control. You can use your mouse or you can use a scroll bar to dig into your data. And of course, you can print the data directly to a printer or save as a JPEG or an Excel sheet or something else. So this is a demo I want to show you at the end of the presentation because I have to switch my computer. So the chart control API. So this is only to use, or not only to use, but to use and to show how the new API works. So that means, for example, I set up a Bubble 3D, and I want to have 3 record sets, and I want to show tooltips and labels and so on. And at this point, I can try out how this new charting control is working. And maybe if I find a new, very useful function, an API call, I can copy and paste this function into my new application, and it will immediately work. So this is a demo application. Later on, I'll show it again. But this application is mixed with old and new API. And you can see at this point, we have colored zones. Like we have in the top a green zone, and we have a red zone, and we can do split zones into a special area. That means it starts from a special value and ends at a special value. Also, we can show min and max lines and different values. And I can show later on how to zoom into this data and into the different areas of this charting control. Also, I want to show how to use the picker to get data out of the charting control. This is one screenshot from a very complex chart control. That means at this point we have different y-axis, we have different ways to display data, like in a spline, like in a bar. So these are group data, and you see you can mix it up, you can bring something in front, you can color something, you can change formats, you can share x-axis or y-axis. So this is, for example, used. We have at this point different y-axis on the right-hand side to display different values. For example, we have a 958. So if we want to display it as a shared axis, we won't see any entry at this point. So at this point, we have an additional y-axis for this chart control. So again, to display the old and new, or to have a difference between the old and new charting control, left-hand side is the old one. So it's, yeah, it displays all the data, that's fine. But on the right-hand side, you can see it's a little bit more modern and more fashioned and so on. So you can use this at this, without any change. So it's really a one-to-one replacement. Additional features, colored zones. I mentioned it before. So you have the possibility to have several colored forms to display some events like this is out of range, or I want to show something very special, like in the one above, I want to show that we hit the 145, so it is green at this point, but it's ends as a special value. So you can set up special mark zones, and you can calculate these mark zones pretty easy. Zooming and scrolling, I mentioned it also before. So we have the possibility to decide if we have a special value, or if we have more than 20 points or 15 points or 50 points on our chart, then we can decide we want to have a special scroll, zoom bar and scroll bar at the bottom of the charting control, and we can move around the data. We can use our mouse to dig into the data, to really to zoom into data, and you can set up this zoom and scroll area by your own. So you can start, maybe if you have 2,000 points to display, then you can start at the end, you can start at the beginning. You can say I want to have 20% of all the points, I want to have display first only 10% of the points, and so on. So it's very, very flexible. Also, picking data from a point gives you the possibility to dig into the data, to say, okay, I want to click on a triangle, this displays data, and based on this picking, I get back the index of the item, of the data values inside the arrays. So at this point, for example, in the arrays, I found this is number 8, and the value of number 8 is 10.00, and some additional information. So you can use, for example, a dialog or a message box or whatever you want to use to display data if you pick with your mouse on a special data value inside this charting. Also, we added an API for free text positioning. That means you can define text, you can move text, rotate text, show hide text, and format text with simple with C# API calls. So at this point, I display low range on the left-hand side of this red bar. So this is a user-defined line. I know the line is on the special position, and I want to display this one in a special color with a special font, size, and style, and so on. So I can bring it into this right direction, and also I can show the text and I can rotate the text maybe I want to rotate it to 90 degrees or to 270 or whatever to read it much better from the right-hand side, from the left-hand side. So this is very flexible, and you can place text wherever you want. The new API supports also to export charts. That means we have a simple UFC chart save as call. That means we have to pass a parameter of the name of the chart. The second parameter is a file name, and the third one is the constant value of the format. So if you don't type in the file name, then the chart control will ask you about the file name with a save as dialog. And if you want to print charts, you can use pretty simple with the chart print and pass name, the handle of the chart control, and then we display or we print this chart control on a normal printer. So, of course, I mentioned it before, you can run your applications in .NET without any change of APIs, without any change of any, let's say, basic technology. But the only thing what you have to keep in mind is that the .NET environment doesn't support quick objects like quick tables. So if you have existing chart controls which are based on quick tables, then you have to replace this quick table technology. But it's pretty simple. If I mentioned before, you don't need tables. You can use directly arrays with the results, and you can pass this arrays into the chart control. So, of course, this application runs also in a browser environment, so you can directly use the application inside the browser without changing source code. The only thing what you need is converted and migrated application into Team Developer 6.1 and the compiler options for .NET. And maybe you have to do some minor changes, but I'm pretty sure you get it managed and your application will run into a .NET environment. So in summary, before I start my presentations and my demos and so on, it's a replacement of a quick graph object. So a quick graph API still works. There's no need to change something. We map it directly to the new API. Existing properties are reused. We have a lot of additional features. You can mix old and new API. It's very easy to use. There's no secret behind the scenes. It runs very well on Win32 and .NET environments and has a modern look and feel. So now I start looking into some source code, and I want to show how it works and give you some information about the source code. Let's start first with a quick graph replacement. I showed it before. So this is the quick graph, and you will see there's nothing behind the scene. If you look into the layout, there's still a graph control, a quick graph. So there's no change of source code. We can look into the properties, the quick graph properties. So, and you will see now, this is again the new dialog, and we read all the existing informations and so on. So if you run this application, this very old application, you will see this application is now running in Team Developer 6.1 and displays the data as usual. So there's no difference. There's no difference in coding. And the only thing what you have to do is you have to migrate existing source code into Team Developer 6.1. A second application is a little bit more tricky. This application shows how to use this charting control inside, or the new API inside your environment. And we want to ship it with the samples of Team Developer 6.1 because it gives you an overview how the charting control is used and what you can do with this new charting control. So I started, and you will see This is our new charting control. I can enable the animation. What I do now, I want to have maybe something as bubble 3D. I want to have 3 repeats and configure a chart, and here we go. So it's pretty simple. Now we can set chart titles. We can set other things. We want to have, for example, a bar with 3 repeats, configure chart, and here we are. I switch off the animation because it's much faster. Now I can start typing in a title, like title for me, configure chart. We have a title for me, and so you can change and test all the new API calls inside the charting control. And if you have a second group, for example, with a line with 2 repeats, and we want to see the tooltip and share the y-axis, then we have a second group inside the charting control. So it's very, very powerful. And yeah, of course, sometimes you need a little bit experience, like what's the right API to do this or to do that. But mostly there's only a very, very small parameter list, and we have added some very extended API call. That means if you need a colored zone, you have to call only one time this colored zone, and you can set up directly the range of the colored zone and the color of the colored zone. You don't have to do it separately by using arrays and so on. So we added some very, very useful functions to make it pretty simple. Now let's close this one. I want to show now a little bit more source code. That means I dig into my special application. First of all, I want to run this application for mixing APIs. So I have a little bit data, and this data is only used to dig something in the database. Normally, I don't need this table or this grid because everything is now inside the API, and I can use directly, let's say, arrays to pass the data. And so at this point, I want to have only data. I want to, for testing, I want to show this really the right data. Now, if I start the old API, you will see this is my application with the old API. This is what you have normally inside your application. So there is really a one-to-one replacement. And if I close this one, and if I use the new API, then you will see I have more options inside my charting. Like I have colored zones. I can do an export to a special format. Export this one into this one. Fine. It's done. I can do scalings. I can have a dynamic scaling, so I can use a dynamic scaling. Like I want to have I want to resize my dialog, so I can use scale options to pass information about the sizing of this chart control inside the chart itself. Let's have a look into the zoom functionality. So at this point, I can dig into the zoom. I can dig into the data. I can move around the data. I can show more or less of the data. So it's very useful. And of course, you can say, I want to dig more into my data. I want to have less information, or I want to start with zooming at a special point that means more than 500 points or more than 100 values inside my arrays. Close this one and close this one and show you something with grouping. So it's very complex data again from the database, only to display something. But if I look into the chart, you will see I have different ways to display the data. That means for the statistics, I have some bars. For the volume of maybe of a project, I can see some other values. I can see a spline about the average of something. I have some shared y-axis. I have a legend at the right side. I can change the legend from right to the left. I want to display more, less, and so on. So everything can be done directly by the API. Also, now I look into the functions. Let me see. Graphics. Show the graphics. So this one is used to create a very complex graph. That means, for example, I have different groups. I want to see labels. I want to see special information. So I can format these labels. I can switch on, switch off some information to display something or not, or to pass a special format into the graph. I have some labels for my legend. And then I can switch on the grid line visibility and the font title, the title itself, some information about the title font for the X-axis, for the Y-axis, and so on. And by the way, you see the new coding assistant and the new IDE from Team Developer 6.1 with the new colored coding assistant and coding information for the source code. So it's set up, for example, from my side to see green information for comments and so on. So at this point, I pass informations like data into this charting control for each defined group. That means for the first group, it's number 0. I get a special count value. I put into my Y values, and I want to display something like a season, like data values is a string array. That means at this point I see a date value and at the x-axis. Also set series color to red, to green, to black, and so on. And of course I can show you a little bit more. This one. So I showed you this is also old technology, the old API calls. At this point, I have a data source as a table. Again, it's no longer supported with .NET environment. So at this point, you have to replace something, but it's pretty simple. You don't have to fill a table. You have only to fill a grid. Then I put something like a font size and arrays and so on. So this is really what you have in your source code, in your existing source code. But also you can replace this with a new API. That means at this point it looks in this way, like we define some max min values, we reset properties, we clear data series, we create maybe 2 columns or at this point chart type lines, or you can use chart time bars or 3D bars, whatever you want to display. Then the visibility, and maybe you want to set point markers, you want to switch on, switch off, maybe tooltips, and so on. Then we have UFC chart at marked zones. That means, for example, at a special start point, end point, and so on, we want to display some special information in green, in red, or you can use constant values to pass it, the colors into the chart control. Also for the settings, for the chart titles, labels, and settings, and so on. For the legend, you want to display the legend, or you want to hide the legend. The legend marker shape is a circle. You can change it into something else, like, I don't know what's supported. So the different, like square, you want to see something in square or whatever. So everything is supported by the coding assistant. And at the end, if all settings are done, you can use apply properties and draw the chart. And the job is done. So do it again. You can see some complex data and with different ranges and so on. But it's displayed very well, and the performance is very, very good. The same, if I close this one, I can look into my build settings. Come on. Apply. Okay. I don't want to run the report. So now I want to compile it into .NET application. takes a few seconds to start. Now here we are. This is now a native .NET application. And again, the charting is running very well. Here we go. So there's no change inside the source code. There's no change inside the look and feel. It's only a compiler setting, and I'm pretty sure you can use it in your application without any changes. Or if you do some changes, then of course you can run it. And also, maybe let's do a refresh. Here we are. Here's some information about the new charting. At this point, I lost my information because the range of this screen is a little bit different. Okay, new API again. Works very well. And we did a lot of tests and replacement with Team Developer 6. That means we had a customer, and this customer is on the way to .NET, and he shipped the first version of Team Developer 6 applications with a new charting control, because he needs this, because his application is based on Unicode, and he's very excited because everything is working very, very well. So, what's it not again to show? Maybe I have something again. Maybe something in real world from our graphic project. Okay. So at this point, I can show you something maybe with text information, like I load data as an XML file. I got this XML file from a customer, and so on. I can show the graph, and you see it's with animation, and I can display something like border, whatever, display X, and now I can change the values. I can move it to whatever I want. Rotate the text first. 250 is not so good. 270. Remove text. Sorry. And rotate the text and move this text, for example, to 250. Move the text, and so on. So this is how to position very free text inside your charting control. One additional point I want to show is load data, show graph. I mentioned that I can switch on the data picking. So if I pick on a data, I get a picked value, like this is number, the ID is number 6, the value is 10. We have an OT and UT from 11 at 9. Also, I can show the zones. Okay, show zones, which is really inside. I have some borders inside, a special formatting of this information, and very, very complex data. So like statistics data and so on. So this is done with a new charting control, with a new API. And the good thing is, again, to summarize my presentation, that you can use very old API calls, so maybe existing API calls from Team Developer 1.5 or 1.1.2 or older versions and so on. You don't have to replace something, but you get a new modern look and feel in your application for charting. And also what you get is that you have many more possibilities to display data in a modern way, to export data, to exchange data into different formats, so that the charting control and your application is up to date with the new latest look and feel of the charting. So that's from my side. If you have any question, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Helmut. Can you please, if you have questions, please post them into the chat or into the Q&A tool of WebEx. We do already have one question there, which is Hi, is there a way of handling missing data so that it is not shown as 0?
Oh, yes. You can set up a new API. That means, for example, if you have a gap inside your array, that means a number null, yeah? Then you can decide, I want to have really a gap inside my my data, or I want to go to the 0, or I want to have a line between the latest, the first value and the next value between the gap. So there are many more possibilities to handle gaps inside this grid. Well, the charting, sorry.
Terrific, thanks. That was the response. Any more questions? So we are at the moment finalizing Team Developer 6.1, and you should be seeing us release this product in the coming days, probably during next week. If we find any major issues, of course we will delay it to quality comes first, but it's looking very good at the moment. So it doesn't look like there are more questions. Helmut seems to have done a great job on this. Thank you again, Helmut, and thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. This webinar will be available on YouTube for recording, so you can send it over to friends for watching it. Probably tomorrow midday European time. So thank you again for joining us, and looking forward to have great fun with you with Team Developer 6.1. Goodbye.